Sometimes the most difficult challenge senior leadership faces is finding purpose in their work. It's not that they don't care about the company or their teams. It's a more subtle sense that something is missing, the job is no longer fulfilling, that they're stagnating or are meaningless in their roles. This can be particularly perplexing when overall you're successful at what you do, and it's not like there's something else that looks a lot better. I'm Jane Singer, and welcome back to A Seat at the Table. In each episode, we sit down with leaders, innovators, authors, and entrepreneurs so that we can learn best practices that will lead us to greater success. Today, we're joined by the fabulous Marla Bace. Having successfully navigated several career transitions herself, Marla now helps senior leadership find renewed purpose in their work or identify what their next, more fulfilling role might be. In this episode of A Seat at the Table, Marla will share why leadership needs to look beyond self-awareness and emotional intelligence and lean into intuition and purpose in order to find work that aligns with them. Practical strategies for senior executives who are facing career boredom that can help reignite excitement and identify strategic pivots, and balancing data-driven decisions with intuition to build greater team engagement and loyalty. This episode is part of our new Leadership Edge series. We developed this series because while performance gets you in the room, presence is what makes people listen. We're unpacking the leadership skills that help you stand out, create real influence, earn loyalty, and build the right relationships. Because visibility isn't luck, it's built. Now let's sit down with Marla and take our leadership skills to the next level. Thank you so much for joining us here on A Seat at the Table. It's really a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, Jane, and it's truly a pleasure to be here.
I think that what you talk about is really interesting. We talk about leadership a lot on this show, but I think you come at it from a different point of view. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say, because people who are in leadership roles, we often don't realize that oftentimes they've achieved a lot, and then it gets to the point where people are starting to wonder, well, what does this all mean? And people have that sort of moment where they start to feel like, am I doing anything useful? Is there, where am I going with this? So perhaps you can talk about what you see around that and how you approach that.
Sure, absolutely, Jane. And I'm somebody who really believes in self-awareness and emotional intelligence. And that's really where my soapbox sort of started. And as I started to talk to a lot of my clients, what I started to see was you could have all the self-awareness and all the emotional intelligence in the world, but if you weren't tuned into yourself, your intuition, your gut, excuse me, what your soul was telling you, you could deploy all the leadership tools that we all know, and they still weren't going to work. And so I did. I took a leap of faith in September, and I started to talk about concepts that I think up until 2025, people viewed as the woo, right? Are you listening to your intuition? Are you following your soul purpose? Things that up until now, it was very new age Sedona focused. And what I started to find is more and more people are, whether it's doing yoga or trying to find themselves, especially as they get over that 45 age bracket. And it was very easy for me to tune in because I had the aha moment when I looked back over my career. I reinvented myself 3 times. And each of those times, it was because I realized I was successful, but I wasn't fulfilled. And it was because of an internal misalignment. So it's uncovering that misalignment and being able to talk about that with people. Doesn't mean throw away your career, doesn't mean throw away your business. Oftentimes, it's just what's missing? What's stopped lighting you up?
I think that's such an important point. And I think that just about anyone listening to this, because most of the people listening to this are more senior executives, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people are senior execs, either with big companies, with small companies. Maybe they're entrepreneurs who found a company and taken it to a certain level of success. And you do hit that moment where you just wonder, why am I here? Now, how can people address this, right? If someone's feeling this way and sort of feels suddenly it's all meaningless, so to speak, how would you advise people? What's the next step, so to speak?
Well, so there's really 2 sets of questions first that I ask people to start to ask themselves. like I said a moment ago, don't blow everything up. I am not suggesting that. But if you're starting to see these subtle signs, you start avoiding decisions you used to make you used to make, I'm going to say that again. You start avoiding decisions that you used to make instinctively. I couldn't get that instinctively out. Your energy crashes during things that used to light you up, as I mentioned earlier, or you're performing, but you're not leading. So, in other words, you show up every day, but your heart's just not in it anymore. And then ask yourself, are you disconnecting from your own voice in meetings? Because those are usually the first aha moments that you're no longer excited about what you're doing anymore, right? And then the questions are, what am I focusing on instead of allowing to flow? So, how is it that suddenly something's taking more effort, or I'm not giving something the effort that it needs, right? And what part of me have I been using for results instead of alignment and flow? And oftentimes that happens when I'm going to use myself as an example. I was head of marketing, and the idea of doing one more website or one more digital marketing campaign was like, I can do it. I can do it with my eyes shut. I didn't want to do it. And
Mm,
so I had to ask myself, what is it that really lights me up? And
mm,
how do I get there from here without blowing up my career? And that's why oftentimes I will say, whether it's my client, and oftentimes they'll come to me because suddenly I feel anxious at work and I never used to. I've been here for 20 years. What's wrong? And really, what's wrong is we can pull out all the tools for the situation, but at the end of the day, they're no longer interested in the industry. They're no longer interested in what they're doing, but they have, as you said, they're already at that senior level. So they have 20 or 25 years. So, how do you start to ask the questions that say, okay, over those 20 or 25 years, what is it that I love? What is it that has me in misalignment? Is it my environment? Is it the industry? Is it my team? Is it my boss? And each one of those things give you insight into, okay, how do I pivot? And that's what I like to say. This isn't about destruction. It's not about complete reinvention. As much as I say I reinvented myself 3 times, I've pivoted. I went from accounting to marketing to customer experience. And in this last pivot, it really was, okay, I've had a 25-year career. I don't want to go back and do more of the same. It's not filling me up anymore. But what can I do from taking from everything that I've learned and move that forward where I feel fulfilled? And when I looked back, and I had a conversation with someone yesterday and networking and another coach, and we both realized we've been coaching since before we went into work. And I started my career in public accounting. So year 2, you've got to mentor the year 1 person. So I've been coaching and mentoring my entire career. And I realized what always filled me up was helping the people around me, beneath me, alongside of me get to the next stage. And I said, okay, how do I now do that full time, but leverage everything else so I'm not destroying what I've spent decades building, right? And so I've used coaches all my career, and that's really what it is it's about asking yourself those tough questions and figuring out, where's my light and how do I get to do more of that? And I'm going to attribute other coaches. I'm a big Dan Sullivan fan. He does a lot of the who, not how. It's
mm.
very much it's a very similar process, right? It's okay. In his case, it's, how do I perform in my 20% to be successful? My questions with my clients are often, what's your 20% that lights you up, and how do we make that 80% of your day?
I think that's a really good way of looking at it. And I think you're right. You don't want to go to the extreme and blow up your whole career because that can be absolutely devastating. It might sound like a good idea in the moment, but long term, that is not necessarily a good strategy. But to look at it and see, what do I get fulfillment out of and how can I do more of that?
Mhm.
I think that's an absolutely brilliant and very practical way to manage some of the stress or angst that people are feeling when they get to that moment, right, where they feel they've lost their way, so to speak. Now, another thing that a lot of people face, once you get to be at a very senior level, you're so used to having to make tough decisions and be very strategic, be very analytic, right? You have to look at the numbers. It has to be, it just can't be like what I feel kind of thing, the way it might be, when you're a fledgling entrepreneur, so to speak. How do you coach leaders in terms of balancing that? Yes, 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 you need to have the data and all that, but you have to also be able to lean in a little bit to your intuition.
Yeah, so to me, that's the edge of leadership. Somebody who can really know I'll call it the facts. Again, remember I said I started my career as a CPA, so you don't ever eliminate that. So you
Right.
need your Excel spreadsheets, you need your data, you need to understand your business. But as importantly, you need to be able to read a room. And that
Mm,
takes all of my friends and my clients and everyone around me, they're like you in the pause. I will oftentimes say, pause for a minute, don't react, actually respond. And it's okay as a leader, even if it's you can't respond in the moment, unless of course, it's a heightened situation. But say you're in a team meeting and you're gathering facts, so you're gathering data, and people are bringing things to the table. It takes a special kind of leader to almost remove themselves emotionally and mentally from that room and look around and read the subtle hints and the body language as people are presenting the facts and understanding what's not being said, asking some hard questions, asking potentially what might feel like a challenging question to the path you innately believe you're supposed to go down to someone who you see as possibly a little checked out. And you might get an answer that you're not necessarily going to agree with. And it's okay to still not agree. I tell them that all the time. But a really great way to garner their respect and for you to really know you're leading with your heart, your intuition, and doing the right thing, you can say, everyone, thanks for all of your input. It was really, really good. I'm going to actually table this conversation and let's regroup in an hour, 2 hours tomorrow, whatever it is. Now your people feel like you're really listening to what they're saying, and it gives you a moment to really consider all of the outcomes of your decision, because the decision might still be the decision you were originally going to go in with, and it makes the most sense in the world, but now you have to present it to the team differently, and it garners buy-in. And it's because you're really using that woo stuff, right? You're reading the room, you're
mm.
using your intuition, and you're looking at the things that are not black and white, and it really makes you that leader that people not only trust, but they want to follow you. And the funny thing is it works. I mean, I look back and I couldn't have talked about this stuff in 1995 or 2000. And I just always practiced it because back then, being a female in a male dominated world, it was a way to garner collaboration and buy-in. And really what it got me was people following me from company to company and industry to work for me because they knew I was going to listen to them. Didn't mean I was going to do what they wanted me to. I was still the leader, I was still the boss, but their voice and their learning, my mentoring them all had a piece, and so my decision might have had to be explained differently. That's a form of mentoring. So again, I'm not telling you to avoid the data or throw out the hard pieces of the decision. It's really folding in what's not obvious to make that decision one that brings people with you and creates motivation instead of alienation.
That's such a great way to frame it. I like that. You're creating motivation, not alienation. And
Mhm,
and you're absolutely right. A lot of times all people want to do is be heard. Even if
mhm.
in the end, right, you're not going to do what they've recommended, or you may have to say no to certain things. The fact that you gave someone the opportunity to express themselves, that you sat there and listened to them, can be absolutely huge in terms of, as you're saying, building that kind of loyalty, that kind of spirit that we're all in this together.
Right. And what you're doing is you're helping them feel fulfilled. You're helping them feel bought into. They have ownership. And oftentimes, when you're doing that, you're giving yourself as a leader the space to then reassess what are the things that I can spend time and pivot on so that I'm being fulfilled or I'm changing a little bit of the direction of how we're going to make it more interesting or to be innovative or whatever it is that is going to make you fulfilled. Because the more you motivate and bring along through loyalty your team, the more space you're giving yourself to explore these things. Now, I do have clients that don't belong where they are anymore. And, the counter side, you agreed with me as far as don't blowing things up. But sometimes what I really breaks my heart is when fear, it's the opposite side of it. Like instead of someone having an epiphany and running, it's the fear that keeps them grounded in their
Mm.
role. And it's like, I'm not going to make this salary anywhere else. I'm not going to have, you said it earlier, the influence anywhere else. And I'm like, but you don't want to get out of bed every day. And you've stopped taking care of yourself. And you're not even going to see friends or whatever on the weekends. This is not healthy. So, okay, let's now dive in. And what is it that you love about your job? What is it that's transferable skills? And I just want to throw this out there because I don't want everyone to think everything's a good thing, but there are positives too to then say, okay, what's a 3 month, 6 month plan? Because it is harder these days to find the right opportunity out there. And I know you had a guest recently that touched on it, and it is about networking. So it's really then becoming very strategic. Okay, I acknowledge I'm not fulfilled and I acknowledge that I have to be fulfilled somewhere else. I have to put a plan in place. It's not just going to happen.
That's a really good point. And I think you're right. I think you have those two sides. The person who is very impetuous, I don't like it, I'm out of here. You see that less at a very senior level, of course. But then you also have the person who, like you said, is almost trapped in a prison of their own making, and they feel
Yeah.
they can't leave. They feel that it'll never be the same, even though what they're experiencing isn't the best. So you're right. You have to really look at it from all sides and realize that sometimes there is something else out there if you're willing to take a look. You don't have to quit your job while you're looking.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it is an interesting model that I think a lot of senior people are more on the side, like you say, of building a prison that they've put themselves in. Because
Mhm.
you, as you're saying, it's very true. As you get up the pyramid, it gets narrower. And that
Yeah.
means there's a lot fewer CEOs out there than there are entry-level staff in any organization. So
Oh,
it does narrow
yeah.
the playing field.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Jane. So for me, and it's funny that it took me a while to get to sort of this being my mantra and how I'm coaching. But when I look back and when I officially sent out a note to my connections 3 years ago and said, okay, guys, I'm no longer a CMO. I've gone back and I've gotten certified. This is what I'm doing. I was almost floored by the amount of my former CMO club members that reached out and were just like, hey, can I have a free couple hours of coaching? And I'm like, sure, I'm getting started, whatever. And so, as much as it's less apparent, is the word I'm going to use,
Mm.
when you get up that to that level, it is actually exceptionally common that what's happened is they've moved away. If you think about it, once you get into VP, SVP, C-suite level, you've moved away from what your day job was that you really enjoy doing, and you're taking on more and more leadership, more and more strategy, more and more politics, more and more unwritten fear. Am I going to have a job tomorrow or not? And especially in the marketing realm where a lot of their life cycles are 24 to 36 months. And I can't tell you how many of those people were saying to me, and I was in this camp too, if I could just go back and do digital marketing or the
Mm.
website or this, I'd even be willing to take a pay cut. I'm just tired of the politics, or I'm just tired of the constant acquisitions, or I'm just tired of whatever it is. And I think that's when I was starting to get pushed in this direction because I realized there's so many people out there. And that's why I say you don't have to blow up your career, but there are a lot of people whose careers have gotten blown up on them recently. And so now it's the opportunity. You have another 10 or 15 years. Do you just want to go back for the money because you should? Or can you figure out what it is you really want to do? And then how do you, because nowadays we have to network anyway to get into the job. The jobs aren't just posted out there. How do you convincingly network and find that opportunity that's going to light you up for the last decade of your career and potentially even give you that part-time job in retirement, right?
We're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll be right back.
We were hiring when we were making 50 to 100K monthly losses.
And why? Welcome to episode 1.
I can't think of a single founder who's been around for a decent amount of time in business who hasn't had their tunnel of year. This was that year. We're going to be okay, yeah, Sheree. Some are going to hear this and think, you TDP. But hear me out. You only have to do the math to understand that very soon we were $500,000 down.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think few people are thinking about it like that. But if you actually sat down and talked to them, they may, when you explain it, to see the beauty in it. Because you're right, a lot of people are not happy once they get to very senior management positions for exactly what you're saying. It tends to be more politics and less about the kind of things that gave you actual satisfaction. Now, some people can handle that politics and some people love that kind of thing, but there's other people, as you're saying, it's a soul-crushing experience and it makes everything else you're doing absolutely fall to pieces because you're so stressed that you're not getting joy out of anything. So the idea that you could possibly switch back, I think one of the things that people realize, certainly in the US, possibly elsewhere, is that companies are reluctant to hire people in a backwards move. They feel the person is going to be disgruntled. If they're not paying as much, they're like, well, they're just going to take this. And then they're going to want to leave because they won't like the salary. They won't like they're used to running things and now they're reporting to somebody. How do you work through?
This is where I was exceptionally fortunate. I had someone take a chance on me, and we're going back decades now. I was already at that level, but it was a
Right.
while ago. And it was a CMO who actually, I had this happen twice in my career. I had two different CMOs hire me into a right-hand position. And I had the benefit in one situation where it turned into the best job of my career. And I
Wow.
had a situation in another one where she was in over her head. And it was almost like I was running the department and she was running the politics of the organization. So I handle that through understanding what the situation is. Because as I say to a lot of people when they come to me, the benefit of my vast career and not having only been in one industry or one position is that I've most likely sat in your shoes somewhere along the way. So I can say, okay, let's talk about all the things that I had to consider, and then let's see where it's apparent for you. And it was a great example is I had one client come to me back in July, and she definitely knew more than her boss in the role that she was in. And there was a restructuring, and this individual had spent 20 plus years in her area of subject matter expertise. And the boss it was one of those, let's bring all these divisions together and they're going to be over it, but they have no clue what the person under them does. And so she kept thinking she was going to be the one who was getting fired. And it was like, no, okay, let's figure out, what do the conversations look like? What is the ulterior motive of why they're asking that? I oftentimes will ask my folks to take a disc and a Colby because they will talk about their decision making and how they present. And then through explaining it to them, they can often see what the personality is of who they're interacting with. And then I can give them clues as to how to communicate with them. And through that, we then figured out, okay, this person is clearly micromanaging because they don't know what they're doing and they must have been called on it. So how do we make you a trusted partner? And what's the language and how do you present to them so you're no longer a threat? And so through having this experience, now when this person may or may not go look for, and I have a feeling she's going to look to change industries and take a step down, which, getting back to your question, I haven't forgotten it. She actually I would say she's really certain about how to position what she does and how she complements, as opposed to take a shot on me. I won't step on your toes, which might feel like an empty promise and there might still be a threat. But she's approaching these networking conversations with wonder, curiosity, openness, non-judgment. And there are people that are starting to take her seriously. So, and having had the opportunity a few times in my career, like if she'll come back and say something to me, I can see where it could go one of two different ways. And I'll give her some points of, you might want to try going down here, but if they start to say this, have your, again, intuition, your your concern, stand up a little bit and redirect that conversation. So it's really about building trust, and it's about showing and demonstrating that you've already done it somewhere else and that you haven't stepped on somebody else's toes.
I think that's an excellent point. And I think you're right. There's a lot of nuance to this. A lot of times people look at it sort of as black and white, but when you dive into it, there is a lot that you need to unravel and unpack and figure out how to position yourself. And as you're pointing out, it comes down to networking and being in touch with a lot of people so that ultimately you find that good fit, right? Otherwise, you don't have too many shots.
Yeah, and you know what, Jane, I'm someone who refuses to preach what they haven't practiced. So I can honestly say about 50% of my jobs throughout my career were placed through networking. I got my
Wow,
last corporate job on a golf course. I was networked from finance into marketing in a
fantastic.
C-suite when I was in my 20s, and I had senior management look at me going, "Why are you in finance?" And I'm like, "Well, I really want to be in marketing." But because I was a high achiever, they were like, "What can we do for you?" And
Mhm.
so and here's another thing someone said to me recently, and I want to put it out there. We've come full circle in the world of networking. 30 years ago, it was all about giving first and just being authentic and being a good person. In the most recent generations, it's been all about ask and you'll get it. And I think people have forgotten there is a balance. You have to prove yourself. You have to be of a giving, authentic mindset first. And when someone truly gets to know you and trust you and knows you're not putting on airs, there's going to be a give without even asking. And it doesn't have to be for a job. I mean, I'm down in Florida now. I spent my career up in the tri-state area, and I was networking yesterday with someone who most people would think is a competitor of mine, and we've been on 2 or 3 calls now consistently, and it happened to have been, I think, like a fourth touch point. We were chatting, and I made a comment about how difficult it is to get plugged in down here at this point in my career. And right then and there, he was like, "You know what? I have an awesome contact that's in your neck of the woods. I'm just going to shoot a connection, and we're going to have coffee next week." So
Wow.
again, it's not all about the job, and don't only do it when you need something. If you're always networking, when you need it, it's going to be there. And I've been preaching that for 30 years.
It's a good point, and I think you're absolutely right. The attitude shifting to just keep asking people for things and never feeling you need to give back has become a very discouraging, can't find the right word for it, but way of thinking that we need to get past. Just seeing everybody as what you can do for me, and if I don't see anything that I can get from you, then I discard you. Yeah, I agree. I'm not into that either. I think that's not the way forward.
No, and again, it's just being genuine and being authentic and staying in, I call it the giver's mindset. If you stay in that, it just comes back to you in spades. It really does. So,
Absolutely. Well,
yeah.
Marla, you've shared so many fabulous things, and I could sit here and talk to you forever. And the
Oh,
fact
thank
that you're
you.
from the tri-state area, which I am also, even though I don't live
Mhm.
there at the moment, but I'm sure we could just riff on this forever. But
Absolutely.
again, I want to thank you so much for coming on the seat at the table and sharing so much wealth of information with our listeners. This has just been fantastic.
Jane, thank you again for having me. I've had a blast.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again.
Thanks for being with us here today on A Seat at the Table. If you'd like to see some of the other episodes, head on over to our podcast website at seat.fm. That's SEAT.fm. There's also a link here in the show notes. And if you're thinking that you'd like to be a guest on the show, you'll find information on how to apply there as well. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Jane Singer, and I will see you in the next episode.